Yeah? Okay. So today I'm going to go through and talk about post-approval responsibilities. So that's after you've gotten your ethical and governance clearance. So for most people, ethics has been cleared, they've got their governance, they're right to go. So yay, I imagine this is most research teams being really excited. So after that, they kind of ask, so that's it all done now, right? Like I've got my clearance, I'm ready to go, I don't have anything else that I need to send through to the ethics or governance office, don't need to have any further contact. It's probably what some people think. In short, no. Ongoing throughout the rest, so what I'm going to talk about today is throughout the life of your study, whether that be a really short, couple month study versus the really long, clinical trials that can go for many years. There's lots of different steps along the way where you still need to have contact with the ethics and the governance office in order to maintain your approval within the guidelines set up by the NHMRC. So what I'm going to talk about today are the notification of commencement. I'm going to talk about amendments, when they're appropriate, when they're not, what we need, annual progress reports, safety reporting, including the new updated guidelines that came out in November last year that's changed how we accept and look at safety monitoring, and then also finalisation and closure of the study. So all really exciting things that I know research teams love doing because it requires lots of paperwork and time. Okay, so I'll start off with the very first thing, notification of commencement. So basically, after you've got your approvals and you're looking at getting ready to go, as soon as you essentially pick up the pen, as the saying goes, that's when you need to notify both the HREC, so our Metro South, or if you're using another ethics office, and also research governance in the place where it's an external study only. So that would be, so if anyone in the Metro South region, you've perhaps gone through a different ethics office, but you are conducting your research on site at one of the Metro South hospitals, you'll need to let the research governance team know that you have begun. So the way you do that is you fill out our MSF11, which looks like this. So you just fill that out and send that through to us. And the reason that it's really important for us to know is it lets us know that you've actually begun your study. And in our system called HREC, which is where we keep track of all the studies that everybody's working on, it basically makes your study become active on our system. So until you tell us that, your study kind of remains dormant, so we don't actually know that you've begun. And when it becomes active in our system, that also kicks off a number of other processes that will be used throughout the life of your study, such as the annual progress reporting kicks in and things like that. So this is a really important first step for us to know that it started, and also for the governance team as well. Okay, so to the more media section is amendments, which is the bulk of a lot of the work that we do in the ethics and governance office, is making changes to studies. So we understand that you have your study, you get going, you think it's going to go a certain way, then once you actually get into the study, lots of different things could happen that could change it. You might have staff members that were once on the team, move interstate, go somewhere else, can't be part of the team anymore, so you need to replace them, or you might find that recruitment, you thought you were going to do it in a certain way and that particular way is not working out, so now you want to change how you're going to do recruiting, or maybe some changes with clinical trials with updated information coming out about the study drugs. Lots and lots of different things can happen. That means you need to change some aspect of your study. So I'm just going to go through the main ones that we get a lot of amendments through for. So the first one would be to change to any of the research team. So the time when you need to notify either the ethics office or research governance if it's an external study is when there's any change to either the principal investigator or the associate investigators or the contact person for the study. They're the only 3 levels that we need to know about. You do not need to let us know if any of your other staff change, because I can understand for some studies you may have research students that are perhaps on work placement or just there as a part of their degree or study coming in and out throughout your study, helping out with different things, helping out with recruitment or maybe helping out do some data analysis. We don't need to know about those necessarily. The only ones we really need to know obviously are the key people who are responsible for the study. So that's if it's a multi-site, that would be the coordinating principal investigator, any of the associates, and again the really key one is a contact person as well, because often we have, for some studies who are quite a few years old, the contact people have moved on or have changed, but we aren't notified. So particularly if, say for instance, in your study you're behind on your annual reports, you may get a lovely email from Sonia, our research governance manager, saying, hey, your annual report's overdue. Usually that's going to go to the principal investigator, and is also going to go to the contact person that we have listed in our database. If you haven't updated us to tell us that those people have changed, or their email address changed, or something like that, it's going to go to the old information, and we're not going to know that we're sending it through to the wrong person. And so we could, you know, if we don't hear from you, we could essentially close your study on our system going, we tried contacting them, no one ever got to us, we haven't heard from them, study's closed. But you're probably still, you know, beavering away, still actively doing your study, but no one's thought to tell us. So that's a key one. We need to know who the key players are at all times. Another one is additional or removal of study sites. So as you get going, particularly the case we get a lot with some of the bigger studies, is you might be finding that recruitment's really slow. You're not getting the numbers or the targets that you thought. So you're like, okay, one way we might manage that is we might take on new sites, might get other hospitals involved to see if we can get our recruitment numbers up, which is fine. So you need to let us know. So the way you would do that is, again, it's an amendment form. You need to let us know who the new principal investigator will be responsible for that site. So you need to nominate somebody. If there's additional contact person, you can let us know as well. But mostly we need to know the name of the site, who the investigator, lead investigator for that site will be. We'll need a copy of their resume, and also some sort of either an email or a letter from that principal investigator acknowledging that they're happy to take on that role. And then once we've done that, the same with removal of a site. Simply all you do is you just send the amendment form saying, let us know why that study site might be closing down. Could be, you know, poor recruitment again, or maybe the lead investigator there has moved on and you've got no one to take over, whatever the case may be. Let us know. Okay, another one, extension of ethical clearance. So from the ethics point of view, generally we usually give, as fairly standard, is 3 years kind of clearance up front to begin with. For most studies, for clinical trials, it's around 5 that we give to begin with. So that's the amount of time that you have to get your study done. Obviously, depending on the size of your study, how things go, you may need more time than that. So in order to get your clearance extended, you need to again submit that through as an amendment. When it comes through, you need to really make it clear on the amendment form why you need more time. We do sometimes get some amendments come through and it just purely says we need another 3 years. Okay, whenever I give that to our chair, so all of these amendment documentation is reviewed by the chair of the HREC or the deputy chair in his absence. And so they need to know information in order for them to make a decision on behalf of the committee. So he needs to know why it is that you need more time. Is it because, yeah, again, I say recruitment a lot, but it's an obvious one. Is recruitment really slow? Or perhaps, you know, some study member had to go on maternity leave for a period of the study which held up some of the analysis, so you've still got more analysis to do. Whatever it is, please put in some sort of reason. You know, it doesn't have to be paragraphs of it, but at least a couple sentences around what's happened and why you need more time, because that helps him make an informed decision on whether or not to grant you further clearance time. And also we need an annual report at the same time. So the reason being is the annual report goes through a lot of the key, which I'll show you when we get to it, a lot of the key areas of how the progress of your study is going. So again, that's something that the chair will look at for him to make a decision around, okay, so shows in here that they've put in notes that they're not hitting their, their recruitment targets, or it shows in here that they've had this problem. The annual report hits a lot of the key areas. So that's another good document to send through so that we've got an updated progress on where you're at.
So also, is that applicable if it clearly states the study goes for 6 years? Will we get approval for that 6 years, or do you go to 3 and then to 3?
If your application, so when you put in your application through to the committee, or in the case of the LOBRAs through to the panel, if it clearly says it's going to be 6 years and this is, we know why we need 6 years, then yes, we probably would give it. But a lot of the applications we get through don't particularly state how long it's going to be. So like I said, it's a general rule. If there's nothing else in the application that says how long they want, we'll give you 3 years. For clinical trials, it tends to be 5, but obviously, if you need longer, it's fairly easy to do. You just need to let us know. We will let you know when your clearance is coming up to expire. So our database system lets us know that, you know, this such and such a study is due to expire on this date. So we'll let you know it's coming up in case you forget. And then all you have to do is just send your amendment. Yeah,
sure. So we're not always totally comfortable in giving 6 years. That's quite a long time.
Well, if it's like a registry that I do, which is pretty much never ending. I think
Yeah.
I did reapply for the 3 and then the 3.
I think it's just an oversight issue, you know, maintaining oversight of what's going on. I guess for registries and things, that's probably an exception, and we probably would, but it takes a bit more discussion than normal. You know, the 3 years, 2 years, 5 years are all pretty standards. We give those, Shona and I give those, but something of 6 years would have to probably go to the chair for consideration.
Okay. Alright, so again, I guess the reason we need all these amendments, just to reiterate the point, is both the HREC and also the governance officers, we always need to have the most up-to-date documents on file for a study. So any updates that are made to study documentation, such as your protocol changes, like for example, even if it's a really simple change, I had someone ring me the other day saying, okay, so we're adding on a new investigator, so they're going to do the amendment to add on a new investigator. But by adding on that new investigator, on their protocol, they list the name of all their investigator teams. So they were taking someone's name off and putting this new person on. Therefore, that's an update to the protocol. So you need to change your protocol and send that updated copy through to us, even though purely it's just a name change. We need to always have the exact same information in our file here as to what you would have in your file at site. So they need to match word for word, version for version. So investigator brochure updates, consent forms. If you change your advertising or bring in new advertising, that's an amendment, so you need to send that through to us. And so an additional point on here, because we're getting this quite a lot lately, is generally we do not approve a sub-study as an amendment through the amendment process, particularly if it's addressing new aims or outcomes. Talk to that a bit more. So we've had a few come through lately where, so they've got an ongoing study that might have been existing for a year, a couple of years, and as the study's gone on, we've had some where an honours student, perhaps, for instance, it might be an honours student of one of the principal investigators wants to do their own honours project, looking at a similar population to what the study is currently doing, or maybe a similar disease state or whatever it is, something similar to the main study, and they go, hey, can I just add mine, rather than going through the whole ethics approval process, it's quicker to do it as an amendment, can I just add myself into your study? So it comes through to us and we pass it on, and our chair looks at it, and generally the chair's standpoint has been that if it has different aims or new aims or outcomes that are different to the original spirit of that application, he does not see it as a sub-study, but he sees it as a brand new study, separate. So what that would mean is he asks that it comes through either as a new low-risk study, if appropriate, or come through as a new standard risk. The reason being is it can get kind of messy if you try to expand your studies and add lots of little ones in underneath. For oversight and compliance for that can get very messy, and again, it can kind of muddy up the outcomes too. So sometimes we get them through and they have, new consent forms added where the title of the study on the consent form is a brand new title and has a whole new consent form which is different to the existing study. That can get confusing for participants around, well, is this the same study? Is it different ones? What am I agreeing to? What am I signing up as? So generally the standpoint is to keep it cleaner. Amendments, like I said, if it's just updates to documentation or minor changes to your protocol, like, maybe you're recruiting 300 and you want to expand it out to 400 or 500, or you have a new aim that you do want to add, but the aim's fairly similar to existing ones, or you're just refining the aim that you already had as you get into it, yes, that could come through as amendment. But if it's brand new hypothesis, new cohort groups, whole new protocol that we've had before that they're wanting to add in a separate protocol, that kind of starts to read and sound like more of a new study and not an addition to the existing one. So that's a key one. If you have any questions around that, obviously, you know, that can be on a case-by-case basis. Give Rebecca or myself a call in the office and we can talk through it a bit more specifically. But as a general rule, we don't usually approve sub-studies through the amendment process. The chair prefers them to come through as a separate application. Okay, and then just the last one is amendments need to be within the risk level of the original approval. So for example, if your study was originally approved as low-risk research, any subsequent amendments or changes to it still need to be categorised as low risk. So for example, so you've done a low-risk study doing a survey of patients, and that went through as a low risk. As you get into a bit more, you might find out that, okay, the survey that we're doing, finding that it's hard to get patients to fill it out on paper or something, we now want to do it in person with the patient, one-on-one, and this is going to take, maybe an hour to sit down with the patient and go through it, for example. That would raise the risk level by having to the participant. So going from a paper-based to no contact with the researcher to sitting down face-to-face, potentially for an hour or more, which is quite time-intensive for a participant, that raises it up from being low-risk research and is now moving into the standard risk realm. So the chair has said he's not going to necessarily approve an amendment that is for a standard risk to a already existing low-risk study. So what he has asked is that if it comes through, he will say no, that amendment is not appropriate, it raises the risk level to the participants, and this is why. We would like you to resubmit this as a standard risk application. So we've had this happen recently with one of the research teams. They've been asked to do this, and so what they're having to do is they're now coming to our current meeting with a NEEF standard application for that amendment that they wanted to add. So it's not that they can't do the amendment. It's not saying, he's saying there's not, you're not allowed to do that. It's just more, it's raising the risk profile. Therefore, it needs to have greater oversight that comes with a standard risk application. So he wants all of the committee to run their eyes over it at the full meeting of the committee. Because the difference, I guess, being is that the low risk is only reviewed by 3 members of our committee. It's not seen by all of them, and it's done out of session, whereas the standard ones, it goes to the full meeting. All the committee members have the opportunity to read it and give comments and oversight, and they all come with different expertise and different perceptions on how things can be done. So therefore, for something that's a standard risk, he prefers that it's seen by more than just him and that it's seen by more members and can give input, and making sure that those participants at the risk level is being raised, that they are adequately being protected and looked after in that study. So that's just something to consider if you're approved as a low risk study. Think, is this amendment that we're wanting to do, does it still mean that the participants are in the low risk category? If they're not, you're going to be asked to do and resubmit it as a standard risk. Okay, so that's amendments in a nutshell. So basically how to submit it, you fill out our MSF 49 amendment form and send it through to our office. At the moment, we do ask that you can send it in hard copy if it's quite a large amendment, so if you have lots of documents that you're changing, like you're changing a protocol and a PCIF, and you have multiple PCIFs that you need to update. Can you please send it through as a hard copy currently, just because it's a bit easier for us in making sure that we have all the documentation. And any changes that are made, we need them in clean and tracked copies so we can see exactly what's been changed versus what we have at the moment. This is what our lovely amendment form currently looks like. And so when you send it through, make sure it's got a tracked and a clean copy, so that way the tracked one is the one that the chair reviews, the clean copy is the one that goes into your file. Send through CVs for new investigators. Make sure that if you're adding on a new site, like I said before, that there's a letter of acceptance of responsibility from the investigator at that site. And if you're applying for extensions, make sure you attach your annual report. Okay, annual progress reports. Yay! All right. So the annual progress report needs to be submitted to the Ethics Office or for external studies to our Research Governance Office on the anniversary of the HREC ethical clearance. So usually when you get your approval letter, it'll have the date on it that your study commences. So if your study was approved today, it'll ethically cleared today, it'll be from the 19th of April 2017. So therefore, every year on the 19th of April is when your next annual report is due. So the purpose of the annual progress report, I know it can be a bit of a pain for some people to have to fill out and like, why am I doing this? Basically, it gives us an update on what's occurred in your study for the past 12 months. We can see if you're having any issues. It's an opportunity for you to go look. If it's not necessarily, bad things that have happened in your study in the last 12 months, but if you've had a lot of success in your study, then maybe that we found this really interesting thing that we totally didn't expect to find. We're happy to hear about that, so you can put good things in there as well on how your study is going along. It's also a good opportunity for the research team to reflect on how your study is going, and an opportunity to maybe sit through your study file that you have at site and go, is all our documentation up to date? Have we submitted everything? Any amendments and changes, has it all been submitted to the HREC? Oh no, wait, oops, we forgot to send that one. Well, we better send that through. It's also really good to make sure in case you're ever monitored by Sue, our monitoring officer, because she comes out to check that the folder, like I said, that we have matches exactly versions of what you have. So the annual report does go through and ask you, have you submitted all your recent updates? So it's a good opportunity just for you to run your eyes over that. So you complete the report and send it through via email. We're happy with the annual report. We do not need a hard copy, just email it through to us. And it looks like this. If you have a multi-site study, we only need one annual report for all the sites. We do not want individual ones. So basically it's the responsibility of the coordinating principal investigator to do one annual report for all of the sites, even interstate sites. So Queensland ones, Victoria, whatever. We want just one. We do not want multiple copies of different ones. So however you wish to coordinate that with your sites, that they feed back the information to the coordinator, and then the coordinator fills out one annual report on behalf of everybody and sends it through to us. It's just a lot easier that way to keep track if we're only looking for one, instead of, particularly if you're in, like say, a 20-site study, we might get them from 13 sites but not from the rest. So it's easier if it's just one report on everybody. Keeps it a lot easier that way. Okay, safety reporting. So if you're aware or not, in November last year, the NHMRC released the updated guidance on safety reporting and monitoring for clinical trials, and some of what was contained in that does have an impact on how you report safety events to the HREC. So I'm just going to go through and kind of highlight what the changes are. So we have, just so people are aware, the Metro South HREC has adopted this guidance in full and it is active, and this is what we are working from. So there's a lot of wording on here, but I'll summarise it to kind of go. This is for people to have a read of later on if they watch the video. So basically, we no longer need the adverse events, serious adverse events, the suspected serious adverse events, USAIDs, all those 6 monthly line listings, no longer need to be reported to the HREC. These documents only have to go to the sponsor now, but they do not need to come through to the HREC. If you send them through to us, you get a lovely email from Rebecca Rye saying, thanks, but no thanks. Essentially, we're not going to pass it on because the NHMRC and all their consultation has decided that this is no longer particularly relevant for HRECs to be reviewing, but depending on the situation with your study, you may still need to send it through to your sponsor. What we do need is have the significant safety issues, which basically is a change to the study protocol or consent forms from a safety event, needs to be reported to the HREC within 15 days. So these timeframes I've pulled out directly from the guidance. This is the NHMRC's timeframes. Within 15 days, along with the updated documentation, urgent safety measure. So that's where something that happens results in a change to the risk level of a particular participant. So something where, they've had the study drug and they've had a really bad reaction to it that perhaps, wasn't foreseen or something like that. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but there is more guidance in the guidance on what these different topics are. But so an urgent safety measure has to be reported within 72 hours to the HREC with a plan on how they're going to manage the new risk levels. So obviously that will be produced in, between the research team and then also with the sponsor, what you're going to put in place to manage it. if because of this safety measure, subsequent changes need to be made to the protocol, which with a big trial can take a while for that to happen, that's fine. But you just need to notify the HREC within 72 hours that this has occurred, and this is what you're looking at doing. And they also ask for an annual safety report, which is a bit different from the normal annual report. So the annual safety report needs to include a clear summary of the safety profile of the trial, and it also needs to have evidence that the sponsor is conducting its ongoing safety monitoring appropriately. So for instance, if as a part of the ethics application that was approved, the sponsor said we're going to have a data safety monitoring board overseeing this, they need to provide in that annual safety report evidence that that board is meeting as regularly as they told us that it would, so that we know that the sponsor's doing their due diligence in regards to keeping the safety going, particularly because we're not having these individual ones coming throughout the year anymore. They just want the one big one at the end. And HMRC did say that the executive summary of the development safety update report would be acceptable, so we will take that. So if the sponsor has done up their DSUSA, you can just take the executive summary from that, because usually it's done for the previous year, and send that through. So kind of summarise, basically we don't want this anymore. So any of the ones over there, no adverse events, serious adverse events, 6-monthly line listings, don't need to come to us. But do send these to us. So any significant safety issue within 15 days, urgent safety measures is 72, and then the annual safety report comes through from the sponsor. So you can ask the sponsor to write the annual safety report. It doesn't necessarily have to be the investigator, depending on your arrangement with the sponsor. If you want any more details on all of this, this is a really quick snapshot. I'd go to the NHMRC's website, and they have available on there the guidance document, which is where I pulled all this from, that goes through, it's quite a long document, and it goes through in a lot more detail all of this. Okay, and finally, so you've done everything, you've done your study, you've done your annual safety reporting like you were supposed to, you sent us the amendments that you were supposed to, and you're winding up and down to the end. So you do need to let us know when your study finishes. We have quite a few studies on our database that have been there since, early 2000 that possibly aren't still active anymore, but no one's ever told us that the study is shut down. So we don't close it off our system until you tell us. So basically what study finalisation means is that when the pens are down, so when everything is finished, and that includes data analysis and write-up and publishing, all of that is completely done, finished, studies wrapped up with a nice bow, done. That is when you then need to submit the final research report through to the ethics office to say, we are done. Okay. Or the other way we also have these is if for some reason your study is terminated, or if it's suspended or made inactive for some reason. So you're not closing your study, but maybe perhaps there's, you've had advice from an international sponsor that, look, we're having this problem with the drug, we want to halt all trials for a certain amount of time while we sort out an issue. That's fine, you need to let us know, so you can use this form for the same purpose, to say that this is the reason. Obviously the chair's going to want detail around why that's happening, but you can say, we want to suspend it for this amount of time, or whatever the case may be. Use the same report, because if you don't tell us, we think it's still going. So you fill out the final report form, which currently looks like this. And so you can send it in via email to us. We don't need a hard copy of this one. Email is perfectly acceptable. But please make sure it is signed and dated by the principal investigator. You wouldn't believe the amount of these that I get through that are not signed at all. We can't accept it if it's not signed, because it could mean that anybody could have typed that up potentially and trying to close your study when it wasn't. Why someone would do that, who knows? But we need to have proof on our file that we got confirmation from the principal investigator that this study is finished or is suspended, or whatever the case may be. Because we close studies because we're told, and then quite often why people ring us up from a different site and go, oh, that's such and such a study, and we'll look up and go, it's closed. And they're like, no, it's not, it's still going. It's like, well, we received notification from such and such, such and such on this date. They said the study was finished, and that's what we go off. So that's why it's really key for us that it's signed and dated by the lead investigator, who has the authority on the study to say, this is finished. So what that does when it comes through to us is essentially closes you off on our system, so it means you're no longer an active study and you get archived. And what it also means is you won't get any more annual progress report reminders. Yay! So I know you love having those come out saying annual progress report. Obviously, you know, if you don't tell us if your study finished in 2015 and you haven't let us know, the annual progress report reminders are still active on there. So in 2016 it'll ask you for one, in 2017 it'll ask you for one. We don't close that off until we get this form. It's also why sometimes I might get from Sonia lately going, we have this study where your ethics clearance has expired and we have no annual reports from you. What's happening? And the amount of time we get back, oh, the study's closed. Okay, well, no one told us. This is why we're going to keep chasing you, because we think your study's still active. So it's really key to let us know when you finish. So basically, that's it. Any questions? Did I answer your question?
I think it is, so
Yep.
I'll see if I've got it right.
Yeah, sure.
If we are the lead site, annual reports go to you, ethics? Of one, so
Yes.
they could collate them all
Yes.
and it goes to you.
Yes.
If we're an accepting site, we send our annual report to the lead ethics.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
a copy to our governance.
Yes, yes, yes. Our governance, even for external study, they still like to
Absolutely.
be kept on top.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we're an accepting site, virtually everything that we normally send to our ethics department, we send a copy to governance.
Yeah.
Right. But that's interesting about collating the 20-year-old hospital, because
Yeah.
we just got that sitting on our desk now.
Yeah, I can understand that different HRECs will probably operate different, like might have a different idea on that, but for our purposes, we think just one is enough. It's a lot easier to keep track of on our end and on your end, just to say, this is the one, this is how everybody's doing. Sending them in bits and pieces, like I get some studies where they have multiple ones, so I'll get some from a couple of sites all at once, and then it'll be months, and then I'll get them from another site later on. It comes in piecemeal, bits by bits. It's hard to get an overall, the idea of the annual progress report, is to get an overall view of how your study is going across all sites. It's a snapshot of all of them at that anniversary date. So coming through in bits, it's hard for our chair to know how all sites are travelling. That's why we ask for it to be in just one. You can look at it and go, okay, they have 20 sites and this is how all of them are doing at this point in time, rather than...
But it's 20 sites, some might have finished recruitment and others are still, like PA in one trial, we've
Yep.
stopped all activity, but there's still activity in lots of other sites.
Yep.
So on that annual report where it says, is there still activity at your site?
Yeah. So you would...
So no,
Yeah.
that, I have to put in a little caveat here, that form is old, and there are obviously new reporting requirements coming into place, and it is going to change to be a much more friendlier form that encompasses multi-centre research, and that you'll actually be able to complete online rather than a Word document that changes your formatting and ends up looking like schmozzle. So it is coming, it's just going through the review
All right,
process.
so we'll just say
Unfortunately,
yes
yeah.
at some sites or no at some sites.
That's
Yeah, I mean, in those
exactly right.
boxes, feel free to, you know, I think you can
Bit of free
expand
text.
them and make
Free
it
text,
bigger,
yeah.
free text,
Absolutely.
or you can go see
Yeah.
attached if you want to, you know, what some sites have done that come through is they basically do see attached and they type out a document that they attach that addresses all of that.
Okay.
So if it doesn't quite fit neatly in the boxes, that's fine. Just say see attached and write a summary up if that's easier.
Okay,
Type it
that's
out
good
and
to know.
attach it to it. We'll accept that as well because I understand, yeah, the formatting on that form isn't great, hence why it's being reviewed and updated, but it's what we've got at the moment.
Yeah, that's
So
okay.
make it work for you how best. As long as you're answering all the questions, that's all we need.
So another question now on
Yes.
safety reporting.
Yes.
So very interesting that we haven't been sending any SAEs through to you, and we
Yeah.
have been notifying the sponsor. But the things that you are asking for now, like a summary or
Yeah.
if something happened now, I don't think I have been doing that.
So the annual safety report, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that obviously, that only came into play, this new guidance in November last year, so I'm assuming a lot of studies probably wouldn't be up to the point of doing
No.
So
And
the
annual.
sponsors know that that's the new.
And do sponsors submit to you guys, or do they do it through us?
Yeah.
Do they need to be on their batch?
We prefer it to come through you,
So
through
we need
the
to be
CPI.
saying.
through the
We don't
CPI.
actually prefer it.
Well, we do,
We
yes.
insist it comes
Yes.
through the CPI.
Yes.
They shouldn't be.
We don't want to deal directly with
No,
the
so
sponsor because
we
it
need to
takes
be
the
on their
PIs
batch,
out of
so-
the equation, and we want it to be a clear reporting through.
Yes.
So a lot of responses were not aware of that we don't need to submit SEEs anymore, so they were asking, you know those sheets that Cindy did? Those, I was actually sending them out to people to say these are, they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
The NHMRC told us that they've told all the sponsors that, I mean, that's up to, I guess that's between them and the sponsors to rolling it out, but we have accepted it in full, so that's what we're going on.
So getting back to when we should be submitting those annual safety reports then, so now we're aware, we would, as soon as we get another data safety monitoring report or whatever, then that's what we should be submitting to you guys.
It depends on what the data safety monitoring report you're meeting from the boards. Some of those meet, it depends, it's different on different studies, because some of those meet every month. We don't want one every month. It's an annual report.
Summary.
So it's an annual summary. So the idea being for the sponsor, it's not necessarily linked to the annual progress report date. It's an annual one. So for so it's a year snapshot roughly. So for 2015, this is what occurred, any safety issues that occurred in the study, and this is how we dealt with them. For 2016, this is, you know. So I know they did say, which I read in the NHMRC, that those DSUSAs and the development safety update reports generally are annually from most sponsors that I see. And so the sponsor themselves, I mean, sometimes they're maybe a couple of months behind being on the exact year, but that's okay. But roughly they say, you know, in 2015, this is how the study went, and this is what happened, and blah, blah. We will accept that the executive summary, we don't need the whole document, but the executive summary that goes with that includes a lot of the information that reports on. Basically, we just need, it doesn't have to be huge, it's just what all the HREC needs to know is the general safety of that study. Is the safety of the study being maintained? Is it still going according to what was originally submitted in your original application? Are you still monitoring people, or has the safety risk for certain participants increased or decreased? And if it did change, what did you or the sponsor do about that? Okay, well, we changed the consent form to notify them that there's these new adverse reactions, or whatever the case may be. So it's just it's a summary of how it's gone rather than reporting individual safety events, which is what's happened previously.
So once again, if we're an accepting site, that report would go to governance.
I don't know, do you want that more, Sonia?
We only want information that affects ongoing site acceptability. So if you had, you know, a developmental safety update report that said, yeah, all is sweet, we don't need to know about it. But if you had one that said, hang on a moment, there are significant safety issues, this risk mitigation strategy needs to be put in place, you know, it needs all of this other thing, then yes, we do, because that affects ongoing site acceptability in terms of the risk profile to the institution and how much risk are we willing to take on board before we go, sorry, can't do it.
So if something was reported to another HREC and it was sorted and this is what you need to put in place and we're an accepting site, then you would like to see a copy of that to you guys.
Absolutely.
Right, I'll send you one today.
Oh, good, excellent.
But don't send it to us.
No, the next
external
one,
HREC
this is
now.
where we need to keep terribly clear.
Yeah.
This is for the Metro South's requirements, HREC requirements.
If we are the lead site.
If you are the lead site, you've used us to review your study, this is what we want from you.
Right,
So what other HRECs want from you,
it's up to them,
unfortunately, can
but at the
vary.
same token, governance always wants to know what.
Just think, how would the institution react if it was splashed on the front page of the Courier Mail? That's always my test.
Okay.
So if you think, oh, hang on a moment, there could be some risk profile change, then send it to us. Yeah.
What about updated IBs?
Yeah, send them to us. We do take them.
We take them, but we don't do much with them, I'll be honest.
But I guess again, when it comes back to the monitoring
notice.
compliance, if you get monitored, you know, they're going to expect that we have in your study file with us the most updated document of everything, and that does include IBs. So yeah, you do need to send them through.
From a commercial point of view, though, we don't charge for an amendment to an IB or an updated IB. So we just fill our cupboards up with.
Having
It's just
the
so we have-
acknowledgement of the IB is a sponsor requirement.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure that there has been some sort of oversight of the update.
And we do acknowledge IBs, we send an acknowledgement letter out, so yeah, we will take them. If they're huge, again, we ask them in hard copy if you can. Some of them are 200 or 300 pages long, and for us to print that out with all the other printing that we do, that's a lot. So, and also, sometimes they send them to us, especially, this again, I guess back to Rebecca's point, that we want contact made through the investigators, not the sponsors. We've had in the past sponsors send directly to us discs, and discs aren't helpful for our chair to be able to review them because the computers that we have upstairs don't have disk drives in them. So they're hard to review a disc.
Yeah.
So yeah, so again, if we can have it in hard copy, that is better. Discs aren't great. As much as I know we want to save the trees, but at the moment that's how we need to go. So any other questions?
Did you get all of that, Carol?
Cool. Otherwise, yeah, this will be up online, and if you have any other questions or anything wasn't confused, you can always ring Rebecca or I in the office, and we will guide you to the best of our ability. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies.
Tell your friends about it and get them to come. Yes, socially.